We're back. Spring training is upon us, and slowly but surely we're getting one step closer to opening day. In the free agency market, Cody Bellinger has finally re-signed with the Chicago Cubs. Blake Snell still doesn't have a team as we enter spring training, and he can thank Scott Boras, his agent, for that. Jordan Montgomery looks like he's probably going to be going to the Boston Red Sox if the Boston Red Sox actually want to spend any money. But we cannot start this season without talking about the giant elephant that is still in the room, the uniforms. My God above, they are awful. So let's not waste any time and let's talk baseball. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be listening. This is Let's Talk Baseball. I am your host, Tom Skull, and we are back for a second season of the show. Yes, the second season on Spotify and Apple will be listed as the off-season, but I'm talking specifically about the actual season. The actual season is upon us. Spring training is back, baby. Spring training is back. In the large part of everything, it means nothing. It means everything and nothing. Why? Because spring training doesn't really give you an indication of anything. It's exciting to see some players kick in. It's exciting to see some players, Juan Soto playing for the Yankees. It's exciting to see that. We're going to see Shohei Ohtani make his debut in the Cactus League quite soon for the LA Dodgers. But all in all, not an awful lot is to be taken from spring training. And I think it's one of the things that everybody's kind of accepted, that spring training is fun to get you in the mood for baseball, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really mean all that much. It doesn't really mean all that much simply because there isn't much you can take from it. There isn't much you can take from it because not everybody's going through their paces. It's fun to see, Corbin Burns for the Orioles, for example. It's fun to see how new pitchers have developed a new pitch, maybe. Or some young guys that you may not have known or may not have heard of in previous years make a step up. But with spring training, I always like watching it because it gets you in the mood for baseball, and it's the best bit about it. Most of the time, the games are at UK-friendly times, so we're not having to stay up until the wee hours to watch some of the teams on the West Coast. There are teams that you normally wouldn't watch, who you're going to be able to watch more this year. And that's the good thing about spring training for me. The good thing about spring training for me is being able to see some of the players that you normally wouldn't watch. Getting an eye on who the future might be. We look at the New York Yankees are a good example of this, and yes, I will be talking about them extensively because they're the team that I've focused on, as you can see why. But more people now are aware of Spencer Jones, who is basically another superhuman-looking guy that the Yankees have got in their farm system, who's probably going to spend a large portion of this season in AAA. But what this has done in spring training is he hit I think it was 470, a 470 homer he hit. And more people are going to be aware of him now. More people are going to be aware of the hype that is around him. He's not just exclusively a Yankees thing, because what happens with some of these young players now is they will perform well in spring training, or they'll do something in AAA, as Spencer Jones has already done. They will do something, and everyone will be like, oh, this guy is an absolute monster. What a player this guy seems to be. And I think that's another thing about spring training that we've mentioned. It allows the younger players to kind of make a name for themselves and deliver on some of the hype. And it's like, it's fun to see these things. It's fun to see the league allow these kids and allow these people to, showcase themselves. Yes, they might not be in the league immediately, But when these people come up, you'll now have a reference point of when you first saw them. But it's good just to have it back. It's good just to have baseball back. The football season's done. Basketball season's coming into the business end. And we're slowly becoming into the start of Major League Baseball season. I was at, for the third year in a row, it was at the Super Bowl. It was great to be there. We had some amazing experiences. Speaking to people of Las Vegas who are excited for the A's coming, actually. I tried to speak to as many people as possible about this and kind of gauge their opinion on it, because I didn't know whether the people of Las Vegas and Nevada wanted the A's to turn up. And, the vibe I got from these people is that they're excited for it. It's going to be on the site of the Tropicana Hotel, which, is one of the oldest. It's not going to be around for very long. We stayed not too far from that, and trying to envision what it's going to look like when the A's complex is there. Whilst I don't agree with the premise of the Oakland A's leaving Oakland to become the Las Vegas Athletics, I don't like the idea of moving them around. And I think that if you're going to give Las Vegas a team, it should be its own team. It should be an expansion team. That being said, there is a genuine buzz surrounding the people that I've spoken to, not visitors, natives of Las Vegas, who are excited about the idea of the A's arriving, even if the mayor herself isn't one of them, who basically said along the lines of, and I'm not quoting verbatim here, but it's along the lines of, the A's should find a way to stay in Oakland. And I found that quite funny, because not long after they released this, the mayor's office released a statement basically saying, "Oh no, we didn't mean they shouldn't come." Essentially, what they said was, "Oh, those A's, those Oakland A's. Oh yeah, we want them. We don't want the other A's." It was clearly a slip up. Clearly, the mayor isn't exactly thrilled with the idea of the Oakland A's relocating to Las Vegas, but some of the fans are really excited about the prospect of it. And as we drove past the Tropicana, and as you looked out onto where the site would be, it's going to be absolute chaos. It's going to be pandemonium when they turn up, because it's such a tightly squeezed in area. The difference between Allegiant Stadium, which is where the Super Bowl was held, and where the Las Vegas Raiders play, is that was a open area anyway. That was nothing before they turned up. That was just the side of the road. So they could have the space to do what they want with it. With where the A's have planned their stadium to be, it's different. It's going to be very tight. It's going to be right on the bottom of the strip. It's going to be prime location for tourists to turn up, but at the same point, it's going to be hell, because you're going to have regular tourists that don't want to go there. You're going to have people going to the airport. There's going to be a lot going on. And, I don't know. I feel weird about it. Having spent the time in Las Vegas, it feels like the A's... they've embraced the Golden Knights. The Las Vegas residents have embraced the Golden Knights because it's their team. There's a lot of Raiders fans out there, but what I couldn't gauge was how many people are Vegas Raiders fans, or how many of them are Vegas fans from Oakland or from the LA days. How many of them were fans before they moved to Vegas who took the trip for the Super Bowl week. I couldn't gauge that. And that's a problem, that's a fear I have for the A's. How many people are going to go to these games we're going to get a lot of opposition fans there, because a lot of people are going to treat it as a event. They're going to treat it as, well, we're in Vegas, we may as well do this as well. And that's not the end of the world. That's not a bad thing, because at least people are going to games, and people are going to Major League Baseball games. But how many people are going to be Las Vegas A's fans? How many people are going to be Oakland A's fans? If that makes sense. And it's very strange vibe in that place when it comes to sport. They love their sport, and they love the Vegas Knights because it's their team. But what I can't kind of understand all the time is how will they embrace a team that has come from afar? Because I think they've half embraced the Raiders, and they want to embrace the Raiders, but they're not Vegas's team. And I feel like that might be the case with the A's. I feel like the A's might look at it and be like, the Vegas will look at it rather and be like, the A's aren't Vegas's team. They play in Vegas, but they're not a Vegas team, and that's something they're going to have to deal with. That's something they're going to have to address. But that's just one note that I wanted to point out, and something that I was thinking about a couple of weeks ago when we were in Vegas, before we get started into the main crux of this episode. And the main crux of this episode is the embarrassment that is the Major League Baseball uniforms that have been designed by Fanatics and Nike. If you're watching this, I am smiling at the whole prospect of what this is, because it seemed every time that something happened, it became even more embarrassing for the league, because you looked at the lettering on the shirts. And now I'm gonna have to find them now. Gonna have to find them, because if you're watching this on YouTube, you will see images of what I'm going to be talking about when I mention them. And Nike has a 10-year, $1 billion US dollar kit supplier deal with Major League Baseball, and the uniforms themselves are manufactured by Fanatics. So this is where the difference. This is where it's all going to be like come to a head of who's responsible for these changes. Is it Nike with the design of them? Is it Fanatics with the design of them? No one's quite sure, and the new batch of shirts and the new batch of jerseys and the new batch of uniforms have come in for immense criticism. And let's be perfectly honest, it's well deserved, because good God, they are bad. They're so bad. There was one player from the Baltimore Orioles who described them as knockoff jerseys. They were knockoff. He described them as knockoff jerseys from TJ Maxx. We call it TK Maxx. Americans call it TJ Maxx. It's the same thing. It's drawn criticism, this is what a report says, for looking cheap, feeling flimsy, and having an unappealing design. The lighter fabric makes it difficult to affix bigger numbers and letters on the back, which basically means, if you remember the old shirts, where there were chunky, big, bold lettering, the typical baseball shirt lettering, that's gone for smaller, tighter lettering that I saw described as it looked like a video game model 20 years ago, that everybody knew wasn't realistic, but it was the best they were going to get, so they put up with it. If you compare the old shirts to the new shirts in terms of the lettering, that in itself is an embarrassment. I've tried really to get into the nooks and crannies of this whole jersey debate, and I'll be perfectly honest, when it first came out, I wasn't really that bothered. The reason I wasn't that bothered is my team doesn't even have names on the back of their shirt. When I buy a Yankees jersey, when I buy a Judge Yankees jersey with 99 on the back, I'm not buying it with the letters on, so it's irrelevant to me. But I look at it at the other teams, and I tried hard to really get annoyed. Like, this is a disgrace. There were some people that really, really were affronted by this, and that's up to them, and that's entirely their prerogative. If they love to buy these shirts and they really don't like the design, then that's entirely up to them. But for me personally, whilst I think they're an embarrassment, whilst I think they are horrendous to look at the end of the day, I wouldn't be wearing it. So it doesn't really affect me. So in the grand scheme of things, I was looking and going, okay, this is embarrassing. But I'm not angry. I'm not upset like some people might be, and that's fine. It's okay not to be angry by things. But the problem is, and the problem is, and I have to laugh about it. I have to laugh about it because it's so ridiculous. Is the pants. The problem is the pants. They're awful. The pants are see-through. See-through. When they did player pictures, right? When they did player pictures, you could see where the shirts were tucked in. You could see the bottom of the shirts. There's a picture, I think it's of Otani and Yamamoto, where if you zoom in to the upper thigh area, you can see where they've tucked the shirt in. That was bad enough. That was bad enough. The rest of it is just amateur. Is just amateur. But the reason why is because, unfortunately, a photo went out on social media the other day. I'm trying to find exactly who the player was. Casey Schmidt. Casey Schmidt of the San Francisco Giants had his, a really cool picture taken of him. Really cool, kind of like he sat on some bleachers. He's got his bat over on his shoulder. He's posing like a major league ball player. He's looking cool. He's looking how you want to look. With one exception, there's two issues with the picture, and they're the same thing. What people noticed wasn't his mustache, wasn't his bat, wasn't the Giants uniform. It was his nutsack. In the picture, you can see his nutsack. You can see his balls. You can see the lot. I didn't sign up for this. I don't want to go on Twitter and see a man's ballsack. But that's what you get. Now, yes, it might be because he isn't wearing a cup that he might be wearing in the game, but that's irrelevant. You shouldn't put on your uniform, pose, and expect to see that. You shouldn't be you shouldn't be greeted with that, because it's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing for the league, but it's also embarrassing for the player, because he's now going to be known as the guy whose profile picture and whose picture on like media day is known for his bollocks hanging out. Someone noticed that on the Cleveland Guardians that two players on the same team in the same photo shoot had different sleeve cuffs. There was a player who, I mean, I don't know who the player was, but I don't really care for who the player is. Susie Hunter on Twitter said, Rob Manfred told us with a straight face that he believes players will love these. And it is of a player bent over, fixing his socks, fixing his cleats, bent over, and guess what you can see? Exactly. You know exactly what I'm going to say. We don't need to see this. I'm not offended by it, but come on. We don't need it. The players don't need it. Trey Turner said, everybody hates them. There will be if you're watching this, there will be pictures on screen of exactly what these look like. Because they're bad. They're so bad. They're awful. That's the only way you can describe it. They're awful. They're an embarrassment. They look cheap. They look fake. You may as well. It's got to the point now where you may as well just go on DHgate and get something, because now the lettering does not look different at all. Does not look different in any sense of the of your imagination. It is insane how cheap they look. Yes, the material might be different, and Nike might give us some spiel about what certain things look like. At the end of the day, I personally couldn't care, and neither could the fans, because we're not the ones wearing them. If the players are saying they hate them, then you got a problem. Because when your technology and your purpose for changing these jerseys was designed to help the players feel a certain way, and designed for the player in mind, then that's one thing. But when those same players then come out and are like, you know what, don't think I like this, everybody hates them. Mike Trout, the only player that I remember and have knowledge of that has come out and said, I think these are very good. The new Nike uniforms will help the players, which was no doubt pushed upon him to tweet by some representative. There's a picture of Justin Verlander at spring training, and his lettering looks like trash. His lettering looks so bad. And the old lettering was iconic, was unique. It was unlike anything you'd ever see in another sport. Now it looks fake. It looks cheap. It looks terrible. And at the end of the day, and I think this is where I'm kind of conflicted with it, the lettering on jerseys ultimately does not matter. It does not matter, because who really cares? Until you see the lettering and you see how bad they are, that's when people care. Because the presentation of a sport, the presentation of a player, the presentation of a team is almost as important as what happens on the field. We've learnt this in other sports. The NFL and the Super Bowl, the NBA, the Premier League, they're presented in such a way that you know immediately that it's their product. They have a unique look that is unique to them, but is presented in a way that neutrals can be engrossed in it. If you watch the Premier League and then go and watch a Serie A game or watch a La Liga game, there are fundamental differences in the broadcast and the presentation of both games that you will understand immediately that they are different. They're the same sport, but they are presented differently. The NFL is unique in its own way and how it presents itself. It is easy to identify what's going on. The players facially might not be able to be easy to recognise because they've got the helmets on, but that is something they can't help. You then look at the NBA, and each player is easily recognisable, whether it be by them individually, with their boots, their shoes, whatever. The presentation of that product is unique. Major League Baseball has a unique presentation as well. And part of that presentation was the jerseys. Part of that presentation has just been ruined. Part of that presentation now is going to be looked at and is now being laughed at on social media by practically everybody that's involved. It's bad. And there's no other way to describe it, really. There's no other way to describe it other than it is terrible. It's a terrible look for the league. It's a terrible look for the players, even though they've not done anything wrong. If they're coming out and saying they hate it, if they're coming out and saying all these negative things about it, imagine how the fans think. Just for a second, imagine what the customers and the fans and the money-paying fans think. Give that a thought. See how that goes. See how that works out. But let's move away from the negativity. Let's move away from all of that kind of nonsense about shirts and nonsense about letterings. Let's move on to Cody freaking Bellinger. Finally, Belly has got a team, and it's the same one as last year. It's the same one as last year because Scott Boras tried to make a market for him that just wasn't there. Cody Bellinger has finally re-signed with the Chicago Cubs. He's re-signed with the Cubs on a 3-year, $80 million deal. And that doesn't seem like an awful lot, because it isn't an awful lot. He had an excellent 2023 season with Chicago. He has opt-outs after the first and second years of the deal. And after hitting 26 home runs and 97 RBIs last year, I think it was kind of expected that he was going to be on the market for a lot of other teams, and they just never came in. They just never came in because they didn't. I personally believe the reason these teams didn't come in for Bellinger for the price that was allegedly linked to him was they didn't really trust the single season. They wanted more evidence that he was back to a good form. Yes, it was an impressive 2023 season, but it was the first impressive season he's had in some time. And it's similar to what happened with Carlos Correa, again, with Scott Boras. 2022 season, Correa signed a 3-year, $105 million deal with the Twins when no one else offered him a longer-term deal. He opted out after the first season and then returned to the Twins on a 6-year, $200 million deal after medical issues scuttled agreements with the Giants and the Mets. He earned National League Comeback Player of the Year, and he finished 10th in National League MVP voting. But his shoulder injuries from the previous 2 years kind of ruined the player that he was. Cody Bellinger is a very talented player, and I said in off-season episodes that I would like to see him on the Yankees. In the end, it turned out that there was no need for that. There was no need for him to be on the Yankees. And he's gone back to Chicago, where he'll be loved. He will be not worshipped. Worshipped seems like too much of a stretch, but he'll be appreciated. He'll be loved. He'll be celebrated for a star, and it feels like a good fit. It really does feel like a good fit. But the fact that he signed this deal, 3 years, $80 million with 2 opt-outs, where he's essentially earning $30 million a year for the first 2 years, and then $20 million in his final year if he doesn't opt out of either 2 years. Average annual value is a lot, but the overall deal is not what he wanted at the beginning. Off the top of my head, he wanted 12 years minimum. He's now got 3. Who knows what happens next? Does he have if he has another 2 good years and he opts out in the second year, then maybe there's another market for him. But I don't think people want to pay big money for a lot of these players. And again, it goes into the overall kind of sense around this off-season that people are just patiently waiting for these players to lower their deals, lower their asking prices. Jack Curry on the spring training broadcast of the Yankees yesterday when they beat the Blue Jays said it was highly unlikely, or very unlikely, that they sign either one of Montgomery or Snell. And the fact that the reigning National League Cy Young winner is on the market, a World Series winning pitcher is still on the market, an outstandingly good defensive third baseman in Matt Chapman is still on the market. And if I'm one of those players, I'm looking at this going, okay, do I need to do a similar thing where I sign a short-term deal with an opt-out? I think maybe they do. I think Snell ends up at the Giants in a similar situation. By all accounts, he wants to be a Yankee, but that isn't going to happen. Montgomery is probably going to be a Red Sox if they cough up the money, and that would be great for them. But this is another sign that the players need to figure out their own worth, and in some minds they have. Because they are, they're putting forward their asking prices that in years gone by a Cy Young winner would command. But these teams just don't want anything to do with them anymore. They just don't want anything to do with this kind of huge money kind of being thrown around in the league. Yes, the uncertainty of local television broadcast deals have thrown a lot of these things in the air, and a lot of teams that maybe would have spent a lot, years gone by, for example, the Seattle Mariners were expected to spend a lot. If anything, they've shed money off of their payroll. The Texas Rangers are coming off the back of winning the World Series, and they're about to lose Jordan Montgomery, a player that if this had happened 3 or 4 years ago, they'd have had no problem spending big money on. But because of the uncertainty around regional sports broadcasting networks and where the money's going to come from in them regards, teams just don't want to spend any money. Outside of the Dodgers, who just went money mad, the highest spending team has been the San Francisco Giants at $207 million. The Yankees have added money to their payroll in trades, yes, but they haven't made a big splash in the same way that they maybe would have many, many years ago. But Bellinger's back. Bellinger's back in Chicago, and he'll be happy, the fans will be happy, and maybe this will open up the free agency market to just roll on and get these stars into teams, because it's not like there's bidding wars for any of them. It's not like you've got one team going back and forth against another. By all accounts, I'll use Blake Snell as an example. The Yankees made their offer, and as of right now, it is believed that they are bidding against themselves. If he doesn't want to take that offer, and if they don't want to take that money, there's not much more either side can do. Snell and Boras have got to lower their expectations, they've got to lower their money, they've got to lower their asking price, and take it from there. But Chicago have got their man, Bellinger's back, on a quite a friendly deal for both player and team, as far as I'm concerned. And I just want free agency to kick on. I just want these players to move around. So one, we can have something to talk about, and two, there's something to talk about isn't the ballsack of Major League Baseball players in these stupid Nike Fanatics Major League Baseball uniforms. I'm sick and tired of talking about it. I'm sick and tired of seeing about it. Let's just move on. Chicago have got their man. I'm feeling quite positive about Chicago. I don't know why, but I'm feeling a lot of love for Chicago this year, and I think they might do well. But I will save that for the predictions episode. Again, another thing we can't really plan because we don't know where these other players are going to be. It's really annoying, but at the end of the day, Chicago I have high hopes for. Thank you for listening to This Is Let's Talk Baseball. It's not This Is Let's Talk Baseball, it's just Let's Talk Baseball. Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Baseball. It's been really fun to just get behind this thing again. I was really ill when we came back from the Super Bowl. Still not 100% right now. But at the end of the day, it's just good to be back in front of the mic. Good to be back doing what I know I can do well. Talking about a sport I love. Getting ready for opening day. Thank you for listening. We're going to play out a Chicago-related theme song. If you're listening to this on the audio, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's just gonna play out. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching. This has been Let's Talk Baseball. Stay tuned for multiple episodes coming out around spring training, around predictions, around free agency rankings, and around the start of the season and throughout the season. Thank you for listening. This has been Let's Talk Baseball. I've been Tom Scholes. Have a good day.